Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about how to send SMS text from Power Apps. Now, I'm using the Twilio connector, which is a standard connector, and as a full disclosure, I am in no way affiliated with them. However, I have been using the connector now for quite a few months, and I'm very impressed with it. Besides the fact that it's a standard connector, I was able to leverage a lot of those features and make some good use of it. So I'll start this video by first talking about my Twilio service, which is the one I selected, how I went ahead and set up the connector, and then we'll deep dive into the app. In the app, I have got a great use case scenario, so I'll walk you through how the app was built, I'll walk you through some of those key formulas, and then in the end, I'll show you some of those tips and tricks that I've learned while I build the whole thing. So stick around, but first, here's my intro video. So let's get started. So here's the Twilio service that I've been using. And after you reviewed it, and if you think that you want to start using it, this is where you come in. And you can initially go and do a trial service. So either way, you still have to come in. You got to go ahead and set up an account for yourself. And then once you're in the account, this is what your console looks like. Now, I initially did do some free trial. There is a little bit of limitations in that. You can only send out so many SMS text messages. There will be some footers over there, basically some text that you just cannot use. And then you are bound by these phone numbers. What I did was, after I was convinced, I did go ahead and set up a subscription for myself. And once I did that, it gave me an access to phone number. That was a phone number that I could use. It was assigned to me both for inbound, which means it sends text messages, and then I could respond back to that number and then do some more work with that. In addition, I was able to go ahead and get the two important keys I will need to set up the Power Platform connector. And that is how the authentication system works. So finally, my recommendation over here is to go ahead and do the SMS pricing, and the pay as you go works really well. I mean, if you just go and see the overall pricing, that is it. That's from a testing service. Even when I spoke to the affiliates, they actually told me that many other companies, when they start, you go through the pay as you go because that pricing works really well. So all said and done, from here, the two things I needed to know was my authentication pieces. So once I got that, I was able to go ahead and switch over to my Power Platform. And in my Power Platform, I came in straight to my Power Apps. I went into my connections, and in my connections, I went and set up my Twilio connector. And I can click on the Twilio connector, and the two things basically I needed was the account ID, which is always one for the Twilio, and then gives you that access token. And that is how you go and set up the authentication. So this is basically how I went in and set up my connector. Next, let's just go ahead and take a look at the SharePoint list that I built. So here's the SharePoint list. Now, the key thing for the SharePoint list is to go ahead and capture the information for future use. So the list is pretty simple. As you can see, it has the default title column. I went and set up one for the message because I wanted to record the messages I'm sending. The message status, that's an important piece, and we'll talk about that in the app, is it goes and keeps track of whether when the message was delivered and even to verify if it was sent. And I'll show you some examples on that. The SID is basically the identification of that specific message because each message has its own signature. It has its own identifier. Segments was a very important thing. In fact, that's one of the things I learned about texting in general is that it's not so much tied to the number of text numbers, like how many, the count of the number of text. It's always tied to a very specific file size, like the actual bits of amount of information that it sends. So no matter what you do, if you send up a big text or if you go and send up a text with images, it'll break it down, and it breaks it down into segments. So a lot of the examples you can see, like a simple text that I sent in with a very short sentence, it always sent it as one segment. But when I had a big sentence, like a big text amount of text over here, it would break it down into two segments. And this is one of the things I liked about Twilio, because when I set up the connector, I could send the message, but then I could also do a get call to see what all information was there. Was the message sent? Did it go? How many segments was the message broken down into? Like this type of interesting things. Confirmation, that was the way I could confirm, hey, I know I sent it, but can you make sure it was delivered? So this is where I'm keeping track of that. And then finally, the out-of-the-box functionality just from SharePoint is to go, who was the one who created it in this list, which means who was the one to send the text message, and then when it was sent. So this is pretty simple from a SharePoint standpoint. I've used SharePoint. You can go in and use any data source that you want, but this is the information that I was capturing. So now that we've gone ahead and basically completed the basic information over here, let's jump into the Power Apps and deep dive into the Power Apps piece. Now here we are in the Power Apps Canvas app, and this is the app that I'm going to demonstrate. But before we walk into the Canvas App Studio and all the settings, let's do a demo so you can actually see how it behaves. So I'm going to come in now over here, and I've logged in as the manager, and the manager is going to use this app over here, send SMS text message to employees. And the full reason for this app is to have a mobile app at your convenience to send these very important messages in a very quick and easy way. No need for emails, no need for distribution lists. Come over here, send out a message. Now, and a great example is the first one. It's Friday. I need to send a timesheet information, just a text message to all my employees that, hey, it's Friday, submit your timesheet. And so for that, I've come into my app and I'm going to go and click on the first option, and it comes over here. Now in this screen, it automatically goes ahead and grabs all the employees that directly report to her, which means in Azure AD under the Active Directory, all of these users have her as the manager in that manager property or attribute in Active Directory. Also here, I've got the functionality to add all these checkboxes. So I can actually pick and choose, hey, I already referred to see which applications or which users have already submitted the timesheet. I just need to send it to only a few people. And therefore, I've provided the checkbox, and I've even provided a functionality, which is this icon. Because if it's a long list and you keep scrolling, you want to make sure that, hey, I've selected the correct people, and then these are the number of people I've selected. Also, if you noticed on the bottom left, it's keeping a count of how many people you're sending it to. So it just kind of helps to understand that. So in this case, I'll just be sending it to myself. I report directly to her. My name showed up over here. And now that it is selected, I'll go ahead and click on that check mail on the top. So it's going and sending a message, and any second I'll get a text message. Now I'm getting a text message because I'm demoing this to you all. So therefore, I've logged into the app as her, but this is my phone. So it's going to text messages come to me. In the real world scenario, the text message would come to somebody else, all right? So let's go take a look at that text message. And right on the top, you can see that message has come through. If I go and click on it, you will be able to see that that's the message. Now this phone number is the one that Twilio has assigned to me. That's the one I can go ahead and use to put the messages coming directly to me. And then I can go and respond to that number also. So something to keep in mind. But this is a very simple message. It's like, hello, Daniel Christian. This is a friendly reminder that your timesheet is due today. Very simple message. So now that you understand how this works, let's spend some time looking at the app. So back in the Canvas Studio, if you see on the left side on the tree view, you can automatically see that I have 3 screens. And I've gone ahead and put in the main container, so you know that there is some responsiveness added over here. You might have already noticed that in the phone, that it actually filled up the entire height of the phone. That is a typical sign that responsiveness containers were used. So there's 3 main screens. Let's just quickly talk about that. In the main screen, it shows you all the options that I have, the services that I have to go and send other text messages. Example was the request to send timesheet, take half day off. That is, it's Friday. Hey, a manager said go ahead and take the half day off and just enjoy the rest, an extended weekend, and all these other options as well. The next one is where you can go ahead and now send the text message, and they're all very interconnected. I'll give you an example. See on the top for the send SMS, right on the top. All it does is it picks the selected item from the previous screen's gallery. So on the main screen, I actually have a gallery, and what is the title which I selected over there in that gallery shows up as the title over here. So it's very responsive. So I kind of want to give you some ideas of that piece over here, all right? And then finally, I've got a review screen. Review screen does a job where it goes ahead and reviews all the messages that you sent. It's actually keeping track of it from the SharePoint list. And over here, there's a couple of important things we'll be doing, and we'll talk about it in a minute. So all in all, these were the 3 important screens. Next, I want to spend a little bit of time on the app. Specifically on the app, I'm coming up over here, and I've gone on the OnStart. In the OnStart, all I've done is I've gone ahead and created a collection, and in the collection, that is where I'm setting up the different text message options. Now, I've done it over here. You could have gone and done that in a data source as well. You could have done that on a SharePoint list. It's completely up to you. Since this was an easy app, that's all I did. I also went and set up my variable for the variable pop false. I'm setting that value false because I'm going to be using that to have a secondary verification in place. I'll also go ahead and have a place to see the text messages. Basically, I'm using that variable, and I've gone ahead and set that up over here. Next, let's spend some time looking at this gallery. So here's my gallery, and I've got a bunch of things over here. By the way, if you want to just quickly take a peek at the responsiveness, I've gone ahead and set up the overall connector, the container. this container is available over here on the plus. So if you click on that, the insert, you go ahead and go to the layout, and in the layout, you see this big container. That's the first one that I went and set up for the overall responsiveness. And then everything else inside falls, and I've set it up responsive, or kind of set the X's and the Y's and the height and width matching to this container over there. That's what helps it become responsive. Now, if you're interested, I've got a full video playlist on the responsiveness. I'll put that link below. Go watch that. I'll further deep dive into it. All right, so the gallery is where a lot of magic happens. First of all, I've gotten, populated the collection which we went and I just showed you at the App OnStart. This is where it happens, okay? All this list is coming in. But I went ahead and updated the icons dynamically. Let me show you that. Now, in this case, when I click on this icon, if you see on the top right, I have the icon property, but it's grayed out. The reason it does that is because it's very dynamic. So let's go take a look at that. What it does is basically it's going ahead and checking that, hey, if this item is of item ID number 1, then give it the clock icon. If it's item ID number 2, give it the emoji icon. That is why in the App OnStart, I put in some IDs for that collection. So it's very easy for me just to refer to these numbers as again referring to the entire text. It's just a little tidbit that I'm sharing with you all, right? So that's how I did it back in my gallery for the icon. It was pretty simple, but it works really well. It actually gives you that, nice effect. And the app itself starts to look a little nicer. It's not your mundane default colors. I put in a little bit nice background. I put in a header, footer, some icons. It kind of gives it a little bit of depth, a little bit of niceness to it. So that is in the app section over here so far in the gallery with the icons. Now, when you click on any of these buttons, it will go and do an OnSelect. But what I've done is it'll go ahead and take you to the next screen. But what I usually like to do is for the MS gallery itself, when I go and select on the MS gallery, the actual gallery, I go to the OnSelect, and in the OnSelect, that is where it'll go ahead and do a couple of things. Well, it does go ahead and navigate me to the other screen, the screen that I want to, but I also go ahead and now populate this information. What I'm doing is I'm using the Microsoft 365 users. Well, what is that? This is actually a good time to pause and take a look at my connectors. So here are the big ones that I have. I have the Office 365 users. That's the one, but I'm going to go and get the direct users or the direct reports. SMS text message is the SharePoint list, the one that I just showed you. And then finally, we have Twilio. Twilio is the one which is going to send out the text messages, go and do the verification. These are the ones. And then the remaining ones are just collections that I use for testing, for verification, getting the information. But all in all, these are just the 6 connectors that I have, the data connections, all right? So just keep that in mind. It was, again, Office 365 users, specifically to go and get the direct reports, all the people who report to me as the manager, Twilio for all the SMS texting, and the SharePoint list to go and save the data. Now, again, when we were in the galleries OnSelect for this item, this is what happens. It'll go ahead and first get me all the names of the users of the person who's logged in, which in this case is Rosanna. She's my manager. So when she logs in, it will go ahead and get all the direct reports to her, and it saves it into this collection, which is my team. Simple way to go ahead and just grab all the information that you have. Next, it'll just go ahead and navigate to the next screen. So quick overview, grabs all the people who directly reports to me and navigates to the next screen. And then one who reports is in the my team. Finally, on the bottom left, I've gone and put this little hamburger menu. That hamburger menu gives me the flexibility to go to the review screen. So that's just a very simple thing, but I had to go and put it in because as I come back, I want to review all the text messages that were sent. So pretty simple. I think it makes sense. I think we're done on the main screen. Let's go and take a look at the other screen now. So I'm going back to my tree view. In my tree view, I'm going to focus my attention on the send SMS. Now this is the one that I just demonstrated to you, but there's a lot of interesting things that happen over here. First of all, let's just focus on the simple things. Home icon takes me back into the home menu. This is the top header. This is dynamic. So on the original screen where we went main screen, I selected which of the service I wanted to do. If I wanted to send it for the timesheet, it remembers the text which I selected, and that text from the gallery on the home screen or in the main screen shows up over here. So it's kind of important that you plan out how the text will show up on the main gallery's text as against what you selected there. It's going to show up over here. So that's the one thing. Next, let's just spend a few minutes over here in this gallery itself. So I'm going to come out to this gallery. I'm going to go ahead and expand it. And these are the items that I have over here. The bell icon, it is basically just a simple thing to go ahead and show what, did the person check the box or not. So if you already guessed it, the visible property of this is very dependent on this checkbox. And I'll show you that. Right here on the bell, I've gone ahead and selected it. I'm going and typing in visible, and then its value is checkbox1.value. Which one is checkbox one's? It's this one over here. So the moment I've gone ahead and selected the value, if I click on it, the value becomes true, value is true, this one becomes visible. So I just thought it was an easy way to set that relationship. So that's the one thing. Next was the entire gallery itself. So if you go and see the gallery, its items is pretty simple. It's just my team. So remember that team got populated right when we were switching over to the screen. I went and did the get users, all the ones that reported, it came up right away. It populated that gallery. And I'll just quickly show that to you as well. We're coming here to the main screen. On the gallery in its OnSelect, here is how the collection was populated. That is the collection that we are using inside this gallery. See? My team. So it went and populated that. Next, how am I keeping track of all the items that have been checked or not checked? That's a good question. So that all happens in this checkbox. So I'm selecting this checkbox controller again over here, and on the properties, I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to focus my attention on check and uncheck. So on check, what it does is it's going and saying, okay, if you've gone and selected this item, then go ahead and add it to this temporary collection. If you go ahead and uncheck it, remove this item from the temporary collection. And then it also goes and sets a variable value over here for some reason, all right? But the two things, important thing is on the uncheck, remove this item from that temporary collection. But if you're going ahead and checking it, then go ahead and do this. Other thing I do is when I come into the screen, I do a clear of that collection altogether, this collection of temp, all right? So something kind of keep in mind, because you might start getting duplicates, a whole bunch of text messages are going to go out. So you want to kind of keep track of that. But all in all, this is it. I mean, the rest of the things I've done is just from an aesthetic standpoint, changing the values. I mean, making sure that the correct name shows up. If you also go in and take a look at the X's and the Y's, they're all pretty much the same because the gallery itself is 100% responsive. And I've put that into the container. And just to take a quick peek of that, this is my gallery. I've gone and assigned it into a container. This container shows up in this place. And then once I go and take a look at its X's and the Y's, it's all 0 because the way it's falling into this, multiple container over there. Again, I don't want to spend time on the responsiveness. Go take a look at that other video that I have. Now, all that we've done over here is pretty good. Final big moment is the on check over here. When we go and click on this icon and we do its on select, this is where a lot of magic happens. Now, it might look a little complicated, but we'll break it down and you'll actually understand that, okay, this is all making sense. So let's go take a look at that one. So I'll come up and I'll go ahead and expand this and I'll go ahead and actually really expand it. And let's break this down into a few sections. First thing is when I go and select it, it's going and putting the value of that pop-up variable into true. What happens is there's actually a GIF that I have over there. It's basically just a bunch of things saying that, hey, something is happening. That GIF will become visible because the value is set to true and it'll tell you something is happening. So and this is a trick that I've been doing a lot is always at the beginning of the formula, I'll set the value as true. You go way towards the end and I'll set that same value as false. Just a little trick that I do, okay? So that's the first thing. Next, there's a series of actions that are happening. What I do is I go ahead and first say which of the item was selected. Was this item number 1? Was this selected number 2? Was it selected number 3? That is the same item which is selecting the title, like this was for the send your timesheet. That's the same ID and the same ID number that I do, the one that I select from the home screen. Now, once it is selected, for all those checkboxes for each and every users whose value we are saving it into the collection temp, for all of those people, go ahead and send this text message. This text message goes to a very specific format and uses a very specific formula. So what it does is this is where the first time I'm using Twilio, and Twilio has its send message function. That's the one that I'm using. And its send message function, if I click on it, you will actually see its syntax. So it's first of all, it's going to ask you from where. The from where is from a very specific phone number that has been assigned to me. Then it is going to whom? Well, it is going to this person whose record is created, right? That's going to Daniel. And the to, is the phone number. Now, this phone number comes from your Azure AD's mobile phone property. That's what it is called, mobile phone property. It comes from over there. So in that case, you want to go ahead and set up its phone number very clearly. And I'm putting up on the message over here, what is the syntax for that? Make sure you set up your phone numbers over there. Otherwise, Twilio might have a little problem. And either way, if you just cannot manipulate that phone number in Azure AD, manipulate it over here in whatever, using the text function that you have, because you can do manipulation over there. I'll put the link down for the text function so you can click on it and see the Microsoft doc for that. But all in all, maintain that syntax, otherwise your connector and its function will break. And then finally, what is the message itself? So the message, I've kind of made that very dynamic as well, because over here, it has to send it to a lot of people, right? So I can't put each and everybody's name. I can't put in Daniel, Jane, John, or I don't know. It's dynamically picking up this record's display name. And this record's display name is coming from that collection, specifically this call collection, this call temp collection. And that collection was filled up based on the selections that we did, the checkbox. So you kind of see how it's all working. It's working really well over here. And if collection had only one, which was the demo that I did, only one will go through, because it's doing a for all. For all doesn't really care how many there are. It just cares, are there somebody in the collection? So in my example, which I showed, the for all for the collection temp only had one person, it'll just go through, send that text message to that person. After that, it will, if there was more than one, it'll go ahead and do that as well. So the concept inside this if function is it's a combination of the if function, and then inside the if function, we're doing the for all. For all is referencing the collection. And it's working really well, because as you see, if I'm scrolling down, I don't have any delegation problems. I don't have any of that squiggly lines. But let's just, kind of go through this step by step. So we saw this for all, it's using the Twilio send function, and it's just working really well, all right? I've gone ahead and leveraged that. Next thing what it does is it goes ahead and says, okay, if item number 2 was selected, item number 2 is to go ahead and send, hey, take this half day off. The rest of the stuff is very similar. In fact, when I was building this, I did a lot of copying and pasting, because right up to here, everything was the same. Then I just went ahead and changed the text. It was really simple. So I'm going to go ahead and now jump all the way towards the end. And in the end, I just want you to keep track of one thing, is that this if function is all coming and getting saved inside this set variable. Now, why is that happening, Daniel? Well, because we are sending out we are using this function, which is the Twilio function, which is the send message. When that message is sent, the moment I put that inside a set variable in that function over there, it'll go ahead and grab all the data which we get from Twilio. That's the beauty of this connector. That to me was the big wow factor, because once I went ahead and got that information from Twilio, it went ahead and gave me what was the signature ID or the SID, the SID. It went ahead and got that. So I knew the exact ID number of that message which was just sent. And the moment I got it, I was able to go ahead and save it. I could go and save that to SharePoint. So this was the big magic. The if function, based on whichever one I select, if item number 1 was selected, item number 1 is to go ahead and send out, hey, submit your timesheet and so on and so forth. But then all of that if and the for all inside the if is actually saved inside a set function to go ahead and grab that information. It's receiving information back from Twilio. Next thing I'm doing is I'm also doing another verification. So quick recap, in the top I did a send message. Here I'm doing a get message. Now why am I doing the get message? When I was testing this and I was playing around with it, I noticed a couple of things about Twilio. In Twilio, when I went ahead and send the message, it would go ahead and set up the status of that message as sent. That's all it did. But then afterwards in Twilio, it automatically go ahead and updated that message status to delivered. So to make this as a really, production ready app, I had to do verification as well. In my verification, I had to see, hey, message is sent, I got verification, awesome. Has it been delivered? And for that reason, after this section of the functions, I go ahead and do this one. Is send an update, get an update from SMS from Twilio. And that's a very simple thing. Twilio has this other function, which is twilio.getMessage. And over there, I went ahead and used this formula, which is basically the data that I'm storing inside this variable SMS ID. I go ahead and say whatever is the first item of that data, because it sends to me in bulk, it saves it in lots of rows. I just wanted, and just the way how the data is coming in, it's not very clean. Therefore, it shows up as this one row. So the way Power Apps behaves is you have to go ahead and just put in the first function. Inside the function, you go ahead and put in this variable, and then you put in the dot whatever property that you want. So the dot SID was that signature ID that I got. And then in the signature ID, I went and saved that information to the variable. So that was the key thing. Then I was able to get an updated information of all the message that was sent. Remember, the first information over here, we are getting some information, but that was like immediately when the message was sent. This information now inside the var temp is a more updated information of the same message that was sent. And usually 9 out of 10 times away from this message, I get an update that, hey, the message was delivered. Sometimes, depending on peak hours of the day, which I don't know what it is for Twilio, I have received information where even right over here, the message still shows as sent. It doesn't show as delivered. And I've got a workaround to even verify that. And I'll show you that in a second. All right, so we've sent the message. We've gone and done a verification. The final step is just a patch. In the patch, I'm going ahead and now saying, okay, the information that I've received, which is now inside this var temp, I want to go ahead and do a couple of things. I'll go and take the message itself, the message that I've sent. I'm going to go ahead and save that into the message column inside SharePoint. I'm taking, whoever was the user that I sent, I'm going to take that information and put that in the title. I've put in, the name, dash, I could put in some other stuff, but the title, in the SharePoint list has to be populated. I mean, has to have something over there because I can't delete it. So these are the other things I'm capturing. SID, the signature, status. Initial status was what? Initial status was sent. The updated status would be delivered. And then number of segments. Now, number of segments I just explained is how many, segments this message was broken into. For the sake of your knowledge, for your interest, we can go and grab that information, send it back. And then confirmation. Now, confirmation is a very important step because I want to confirm in the SharePoint list if the message was delivered or not. And therefore, I've put this if statement that, hey, if your status is delivered, then go and set that confirmation to true. That true, by the way, in a SharePoint list, it will go ahead and be blank. If it is there, then it will go ahead and actually send that as a checkbox over there. So that's basically how that works. And that's basically it in this patch function. It works really well. And then as you can see, I've gone and updated a couple of my other variables just to go ahead and show how this is all working. And it just works really well from this standpoint. Now, the final piece is the verification. It is also a very important piece. So for that, we're going to switch gears and now go to the last screen, which is the review screen. I'm going to go and close this one. And here's what the review screen looks like. So first thing, let's just take a look at what the screen looks like because I'm seeing a few differences over here. You can see the gallery. The gallery is going ahead and showing the text message that I sent. By the way, this gallery data is coming from the SharePoint list where we're storing the data. But as you can see, the icons have changed. There is the icon of this. It's usually standing for send, like a message or a mail is sent. And then this one, which is a check icon. So what are the differences? Well, let's go take a look at that. Now, as you remember, I just talked about it a few seconds ago that when the message is sent through Twilio, most of the time it will go and send it and it will get it delivered. Every once in a while, it will send it. And even though when I did the double take inside that same, function back over there, let me just quickly show you here. I'm talking about this section here. When I go ahead and send it, I'm going and doing the send inside Twilio. And also I do a get message. This is what I meant by the double take. So when I go ahead and do that, every once in a while, it still responds back as the status as just sent. Therefore, those ones which the status is just send, it uses the Twilio icon for send. All right, that's what it is. But if the status is not sent, that's when it goes and checks it into the check. So this is just a clear way for me to see, okay, this one, these two, because they've got the check icon, I know that the message was delivered. But this one over here, I really don't know if the message was delivered. And for that, that's why in its on check, I'm doing another get. So here in its on select, I'm putting in that, hey, if this message status is not delivered, go ahead and do another check. It's actually saying, get me that message. And the message, I've got to go in and send the ID. And for that, I go in and say this items.sid because now we've got that ID saved in the SharePoint list. I can go and leverage that information. Therefore, I go and do the Twilio.getMessage and I go ahead and assign that ID. Connector goes and sends it to Twilio. Twilio will respond back. That response, all the information gets saved into this variable. Then I go ahead and reference this variable. I say, hey, if this variable.status equals delivered, go ahead and update that item. So I patch the item, I put in the location. I have to do a lookup of what is that ID. And that lookup ID goes with, again, the SharePoint list. Its ID equals this item ID. And then the message status, I will go ahead and say, message status, now set it to delivered. and then the confirmation status, go and set it as true. So this is what it looks like right now. See, and now it kind of makes a little sense how it works. The delivered ones, its message status will be check. But if it is just sent, then I haven't put the message status as sent. What it does is this thing goes ahead and takes care of that. So now if we go ahead and do another test of that, it'll make sense. So let's actually do a quick test on that one as well, just because we are all very excited about it. All right, so I'm coming in now and go and click on it. And if I click on this section here, that icon, it'll click it, quickly something is happening, and it verified, hey, it was sent, which means, it is delivered, so I can go and change this icon. That's another side note, beauty of the SharePoint list connection. Once I click on it, I don't have to do a refresh option. It automatically goes and refreshes it. And because this is item number 1, if I now come to my item number 1, you see, message changed to delivered, and that checkbox got done. Don't remember that? All right, let's go and do it on the 6th one as well. All right, we'll do another test. 6th one, check it, it's verifying. Oh, we went ahead and set it up, updated so fast. Comes in over here in any second. Now this will also get updated. In fact, just to be quick, I'll go ahead and do it myself. Refreshes it, and this went ahead and delivered. So I made this app fully production ready for that reason. Is I wanted to also provide a place for the managers, because they can go and click on it. It'll even show up a bigger text of that. That's all the fun pieces of it. But this was the important piece for the actual usage of the app, is to go ahead and do that fun value there. So quick recap. We were able to successfully, through Power Apps only, right? No Power Automate was used, use the Twilio connector to send SMS message. And then also once we got the SID or the SID, we were able to verify it using the get message. And that was an important piece, because sometimes we didn't get confirmation immediately whether the message was delivered. So we could do that double confirmation, and we were able to use the gallery and the dynamic icons to even help us realize, hey, which one of them was just sent as well as which was delivered. Also, we kind of tested the potential of Twilio over here, because I just basically scratched the surface of what all Twilio could do and the metadata information that it sends. I just grabbed a few things such as the SID, confirmation number, but it pulls so much metadata, and if you start playing with it, you'll see what I'm doing. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Hopefully this was an idea that especially managers and senior people can start leveraging it, and you can go and build your own app. So hopefully this was helpful. And as always, keep using Power Apps. Thank you so much for watching my YouTube video. Remember, this is all free with fresh content that is updated on a weekly basis. So if you've already subscribed to my channel, thank you, and spread the word. If you haven't already, subscribe, click on the bell notification, and let the learning begin.